This video covers the IGCSE Biology Objective 2.1.4 on the 2025 CAIE syllabus to describe the functions of the structures in plant, animal, and bacteria cells. So let's take a look at animal cells. So we've got all the structures that you need to know here and what they do. So we'll start with the nucleus. The nucleus in an animal cell is a membrane-bound organelle that is found in what's called a eukaryotic cell. That is the opposite of a prokaryotic cell. Eukaryote just refers to the fact that it is a membrane-bound nucleus. The nucleus controls the activities of the cell and contains DNA, or you could say genetic information. So its function is to control the activities of the cell. The second structure is the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is mostly made of water and contains all the organelles of the cell. It's going to give the cell its shape, and it is where the chemical reactions take place. There are hundreds of chemical reactions that take place inside a cell, and so this is the area where that occurs. All right, the ribosomes. There are many of these found throughout the cytoplasm, and the ribosome is the organelle that is responsible for making proteins, and we'll learn about that later on in the syllabus. The mitochondria. Mitochondria are membrane-bound organelle, and this is where energy is made through the chemical reaction of respiration, which we will learn about in detail later on in the syllabus. We have vesicles. I did mention in a previous video that vesicles are only found in animal cells. These are structures that transport and store various substances for use or disposal. So if something like carbon dioxide is produced by the mitochondria, a vesicle would carry the carbon dioxide molecules to the cell membrane so that it could be disposed into the bloodstream and therefore not harm the cell itself. Finally, in the animal cell, we have the cell membrane. The cell membrane is a thin layer made up of protein and fat, and the cell membrane is going to control what goes in and out of the cell. So these are the parts of the animal cell, the organelles of the animal cell, that you need to be able to describe the function of. So that's 6 organelles. Now, as we look at plant cells, those organelles are similar, and so I'm not going to go over the ones that I've already talked about. So for example, the nucleus has the same function. The cytoplasm has the same function. The ribosomes have the same function. So I'm not going to go over them again. Let's just look at the 3 organelles that are different in plant cells. So first of all, we'll start with the vacuole, sometimes called a large vacuole, sometimes called a central vacuole. But vacuoles contain a solution of sugars and other substances which combined together is called cell sap, and its function is to keep the shape of the plant cell. So it's going to keep a very firm shape, and when we get into more information about water and movement of water, we'll talk more about how this helps the plant in its overall structure. We have the chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are going to contain pigments which are called chlorophyll, and the chloroplast's job is to absorb light, which is then going to be able to make food through the process of photosynthesis. And all of this we will talk about in more detail later in the syllabus. And finally, we have the cell wall. The cell wall is fully permeable. Okay, that means that it just allows anything in and out, which is different than the cell membrane, which is going to allow certain molecules in, certain molecules out, stop molecules from moving in and out. So it is fully permeable. It is made of cellulose, which is a carbohydrate-based substance, and we'll learn more about that when we talk about biological molecules, and its function is to protect and support the plant cell. And finally, we're going to take a look at the bacteria cell and some of the functions of its organelles. So again, we're not going to go over some of the parts that we've already discussed, like the ribosomes and the cytoplasm and the cell membrane. The first one that we want to focus on is the plasmid DNA, because this is different than other cells. This is a small separate strand of DNA that is found in the cytoplasm, which specifically is used for the process of genetic engineering. So when we get to the section on biotechnology, this component of bacteria cells will be very, very important in that process. We also want to talk about the circular DNA. The circular DNA is a non-membrane bound genetic information, hence prokaryote, which we've talked about before, which controls the activities of the cell. And finally, the cell wall, which is made up of something called peptidoglycan. This is protein-based structure, which is different than the plant cell, which is a carbohydrate-based structure. So a protein-based structure that surrounds the cell membrane, which is going to support and protect the cell. This is going to be very important when you discuss how protected the bacteria are from the immune system of a host that it has entered. And so depending on how thick the cell wall is will then determine if the immune system will be able to effectively destroy these cells. In addition, antibiotics can help in a bacterial infection because those antibiotics in fact destroy the cell wall. So antibiotics are made with a certain target in mind, and one of those targets is the cell wall of bacteria. So that's why antibiotics can be effective against bacteria cells and not harm the human that has taken the medication, because of course human animal cells don't have cell walls, so therefore the human cells are not harmed, whereas the bacteria cells, which do have the cell walls, are destroyed.